to my channel White Light Blessings. I'm Francesca, the host, and today I have a very, very special guest, Glen Fisher. Welcome, Glen. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy, especially now, and you probably, as you were saying before the recording started, being asked to do heaps of podcasts. And so I really appreciate you being here and yeah, just willing to share your story.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. Thank you for the invite. Hopefully, we can get some traction for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Glen, I know, I've read your book, Predator's Paradise, and that was hectic. Every page, it wasn't even every chapter, it was like every page, I was just like, my heart just went out to you and everything you went through. And then obviously, like I went on social media after that to try and find you because I was like, right, gotta find this Glen Fisher guy, And I found you and just to see how you've come around and in your life and what you've achieved coming from such a dark place. And that I must say a lot of people they don't come out of. And also, I just want to say I knew from the book and I knew from watching you on TikTok and all of that that you're highly intelligent, very intellectual, and I got that energy from you. And yeah, I'm really in awe, actually.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, the book was hard and it was hard to live that life and to come out of that life. And I think that's one of the reasons why I speak today, because so many people get stuck as a victim to themselves after they have so much trauma go on in their life. They end up becoming their own worst enemy. They justify everything with, or they just get stuck in this mindset of being a victim and they don't know it. And I want to try and liberate people from that.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's really important because we can only help ourselves. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't, the key is yourself, in whatever you do. And yeah, I think you're just I suppose, the example of that. But Glenn, I wanted to talk about, your early life and, how your journey on this earth began. And, I no, it really stuck with me how much your mum impacted your early years and how that really, she just seemed to have this like awful dislike for you above your other siblings. Do you want to maybe start there? And
Yeah, well, my mother was schizophrenic. She was a heroin addict and took pills, and she ended up when pregnant with me, swapping the rich for the bitch. So she ended up giving up the heroin, but becoming an alcoholic. And she had a serious propensity towards violence. She was a very violent woman. Everything she knew was resolved that way. And it didn't help that she had four kids under the age of five, or that she was married to my husband, who's also an alcoholic and a predator. As we'll get to further along in the story. But early on in the piece, for the first 7 years of my life, I just remember a lot of violence, screaming, yelling, being taken away by docs, being put back again, being taken away, and always being the one called in the middle of their fights. Every time they'd punch on or scream or yell, I'd always be the one called to mediate. And as a child, there's no winner there. I can't, like, if I pick one side, I've lost to the other. Like there's no winner in these arguments. And this need inside of me to try and protect my siblings. I don't know why my mother had such a distaste for me, but she did. I know I was hyperactive as a kid. I had ADHD, so that probably didn't help. The fact that I was very inquisitive, and I think that's stems from trauma as well. I think that when we're really afraid, we try to control our environment, and one of those things I used to try and do was control what I could hear. Knowledge was power, kind of thing. I don't think I consciously thought that, but I was always listening in, and that didn't help my cause either. But it's when I turned 7 that things really start to turn pear-shaped in my story. My dad gets arrested, taken to jail for being a predator, pedophile, and my mother puts herself through a back window, severing two of her arms. She got 120 stitches in one arm and 100 stitches in the other. So they put her into a psych ward in Ryde Psychiatric Hospital, which left us four kids homeless. So they put us into an orphanage. And my mother ends up getting out a couple of weeks later and gets out the youngest boy and my sister. And but that leaves my brother and I in the system for the next 18 months. The odd thing of my story is my dad, who's been convicted for pedophilia, is the person who I'm released to from the institution. So after we're let out of the orphanage, it's our dad that actually gets us out. And but after about a week or two of my mum finding out that we're there, she suddenly wants us back again. We moved back to my mother's in Mount Druitt. My mother's life's changed somewhat. I mean, the drinking and all that's the same, but now it's a party. She's got all these people around the house all the time drinking. Uncle Pat, who's a family friend as from birth that we knew in our family, who was always promiscuous. I have all these memories prior to 7 of all these little incidents because both my families were nudists, so we were always nude anyway. And I have all these recollections of these little things happening of me being asked to climb on his daughters, him masturbating in front of me in a car. But before the age of 7, I'm too young to comprehend that that's even a thing, right? That I just sort of don't really know what's going on. But around 9, my mother used to give me tablets to keep me sedated. So she gave me tablets one night and I went to bed and I woke up at 9 years old being brutally raped by Pat Chase. And again, at 9 years old, I didn't know what was happening to me. I just knew that it hurt. And I just knew that when I woke up, he suddenly grabbed me and cuffed me and held me really tight and then lets me go. And I remember sitting on my bed for hours, just rocking back and forth. I don't want to talk about the graphic side of what was impacting me, but there was a lot of, other things going on for me as well. And I couldn't quite figure out what had happened to me. I just knew that I was in pain and I didn't like it, what had happened. It's sad because at 9 years old, a lot of things happen. If you read my book, you know that I had an incident where my mother tried to sever my fingers with a knife. She literally just attacks me one day with she was addicted to Beck's and Vincent powders. And in those days, the Mr. Whippy truck used to supply that. She hears the Whippy truck going and she's like searching the house frantically for money. And then what happens is she picks up a knife and just throws it at me. Says, "I know you stole money off me, you little," calls me all these names. Like I didn't do anything, man. I've been no part in this at all. She said, "If you don't give me some money, give me the money now. I'm going to drag you and chop off your fingers." And the next thing I know, she's literally got me by the head, dragging me along my side. I got carpet burn all down one side of my body. Another girl arrives named Michelle Coveney and helps her literally drag me to the bathroom. And she holds my fingers over the sink. And what I don't know for sure is whether she meant to cut at my fingers or whether the knife was so sharp that when she put it against my fingers that it severed them. Both my fingers were severed. And but what I do remember is landing on the ground and taking my shirt off and wrapping my hand up and just being in shock. I've had a lot of physical violence in my life, but it's never risen to that level. That's a whole new level of where I'm literally on a bathroom floor bleeding. And then the next incident, you probably read this in my book as well, was where my mother, I got given a push bike for Christmas, a Hanimex bike, and it was a shit bike, but I liked it. I owned it. And I went riding it one day around Mount Druitt when a group of about 7 or 8 teenagers, 14, 15-year-old, put their hands on the handlebar of my bike. And I'm 9, and they make me get off the bike and take the bike off me. When I go back to my mother and tell her what's happened, she says, "The fuck they did." She said, "Let's go." She grabs me and my brother and marches us down to find these kids, right? The next minute, she's saying, she picks out the biggest one of them and says, "You fight my son. I'm 9, he's 15." It wasn't a fight, it was a beating. He like, oh man, he just chopped into me, and I didn't know what to do. And I was still at that stage where I was doing this all the time. I'd been hit so many times that I was always covering myself. And, but the thing that hurt me the most was not the beating from him, was the words from my mother. She kept saying, "You're a weak C and have a go, you coward, fight back," and it's like, it just didn't make any sense to me. But around the age of 10, my dad decides he wants custody of me, and a court battle ensues. And we go to court, and my mother says, "To hell, he's going to get you," blah, 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 making out like she wants me. And the judge actually calls me into his room, his chambers, and he said, "Glenn, what do you want?" I said, "Look, I just want to stay with my mother. I hate living with both of them. They're hurting me." But I said, "I want to stay there because my brothers and sisters are there." And he said, "All right, mate, that's what we'll do." Then when we get back to court, what I don't know is my mother says to me, "Go and have lunch with your dad and his girlfriend, Marion." And I'm like, she said, "Because he probably won't get to see you for a while." And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense. So I went and had the meal. I come back to court and the judge is reading out his decision. He says, "I've decided to send the boy to live with his father on the Central Coast." And I was like, it just seems so wrong.
Did they know, Glenn, did the system know that your father was a convicted pedophile?
Well, I
Have
mean, I don't
you?
know that came up in court, but I mean, he's
Mm,
convicted. He was in jail. I mean, it's on his record. They have to have known, and he was convicted twice for two different separate offences. But I'm placed into his care, and I lived there for a couple of years with him and his girlfriend and their three kids. But I am so scared of my dad. Even though my mother was more volatile and was the one likely to go off and start whacking me, my dad's temper was different. He's the kind of guy that would wait 2 weeks and he'd be driving along in the car, then suddenly your face would go numb and he'd just backhand you and it'd be like, 2 weeks ago, we were at a party and I told you not to touch the food and you touched the food. And it's like, so you're always afraid of him. So I start
mm.
running away from home. I'm sick of, being hit, hurt, bashed, and CSA abuse. So I start running away from home, and the system's answer to my running away from violence is to place me in some institutions that are more violent or a different kind of violence. I end up in a place called Warramai, then Yasma, and then Darrick Boys Home in Sydney.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of kids went through a lot of sexual abuse in those institutions from officers. That wasn't my story. Because what happened was when my brother and I ran away together, I was 12 and he was 11. We were both supposed to go to Yasmo Junior Side and then to Reby. But they made a decision to separate siblings, right? So they bumped the older brother up. So I get bumped up to senior side of Yasma, where I'm in with kids 15, 16, 17. And then in Darrick, I'm 12 with 14, 15-year olds. And in Yasmar, it starts with people always touching me. Every time I get in the shower, they'd all come stand behind me and play with
Was
themselves and touch
this
me.
the was this the other boys in the home or the
Other boys,
staff?
yeah. No, the other boys. But the officers used to laugh or walk out of the room. Like if they come to my shower and start doing stuff, the officers would literally leave the room and just leave me there on my own. And although I wasn't raped in Yasmar, I was touched so much. People would get in my bed and like do horrible things, around me, and like it was funny, and everyone's laughing like it's a big joke, but it wasn't funny to me. And then I end up getting put in Darrick, and I actually get raped twice in that institution by older kids. An officer walked out of a boiler room and left me in the boiler room on my own, and with all these kids who just fucking ripped my clothes off and just start like abusing me. And
I mean, that's obviously, more than obvious that that's happened to all of them as well
yeah,
at different state. Like,
yeah,
that's
that's
all they
right.
know.
To them, it's just normal behavior, I'm sure. But to me, as a little boy, I was just so frightened. Everyone was so bigger than me. Everyone was
Yeah.
stronger than me. And when I get out of Darrick, which is insane to me, they put me in custody of my dad again. But this time I run away again. But instead of running away, I actually go to Mount Druitt, catch a train to Mount Druitt. I go in and see a welfare officer named Mr. Brian Hubble. And I said, look, I'm not trying to be a bad boy. I said, you just keep locking me up for running away from home. I'm running away because I'm sick of being hurt. I said, everywhere you send me, I'm being abused, I'm being hit, I'm being hurt. I'm fucking tired of being hurt. I'm now like, I look like a pretty little girl. I'm really tiny kid. I don't know how, I mean, I'm 6'3" now, but then I was really thin, tiny little boy. They said, oh, we might be able to get you foster care. And I was like, okay, that would be nice, like, a foster family. They introduced me to this family at Mount Druitt. And it's hard to talk about them because I have such a love and hate for these people. I love that they showed me the first bit of kindness. The first time there was a whole lot of firsts for me in that house. First time with a proper bed made. The first time where I'm allowed to eat what I want to eat. Like that was a foreign concept to me to be able to just go and to the fridge and get something to eat. I always felt scared or nervous. The problem was this house was a 3-bedroom house. It had 9 adults living in it, 3 men in my bedroom. So there's 2 bunks in my bedroom. There's 3 adult men and me. 2 of the men have prior convictions for being pedophiles. Worse than that, they had one kid that lived there who was shot dead in their custody. The second kid that lived there was a girl who was raped in the laundry by one of the men. And the third one, which is me, the guy Les Carter, has already been convicted for raping a 2-year-old child, is in the bed literally beside me. It doesn't take a
I
scholar.
mean, that's just unbelievable. And I mean, to me, that kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like obviously there's some sort of trafficking ring going on where they were being placed there deliberately as part of the systems network.
Yeah, my lawyers and police literally said both have stated that they believe that to be true. The irony of my story is that docs have given me all my records, but seemingly missing my being placed into foster care. Fortunately for me, my foster parents and my foster sister put their hand up and said, no, he was fucking here. His welfare officer was Brian Hubble, and yes, Les Carter did abuse him. And so that's made things a little easier. But I've been suing now since 1996 and I still have not had any success because it's complicated.
That's
The
29 years. That's
29 years.
29 years.
Meanwhile, probably about 80% of the people who have been compensated haven't actually been abused. There's so many people now who are rorting the system, but genuine survivors like myself are falling through the cracks. And it's like, and I don't want to go back into victim mode because that's what can happen. I can say like, why this isn't fair? Why not me? But you know what? No amount of money is going to undo my past. No amount of money is going to change anything for me. It's about
No.
ownership. No.
Yeah. And I feel like what you're doing now is far more powerful than ever getting a payout for something, you know.
Absolutely.
You're not
Absolutely.
afraid to name names, you're not afraid to speak openly about it. And I think that that is far more powerful than, you know, getting a payout and keeping it all hush hush, you
When
know.
I first started speaking up, I had suppression. So I went through 4 separate trials, which we'll get to, and 2 royal commissions. There would have been 3 other trials, but 3 people died through the process. I forgot where I was going with that, but it was important.
You were saying how you were in the house at the foster home and how, you know, your lawyers and everyone had said that it was more than likely a trafficking ring of some kind.
Yeah, absolutely. So what actually ends up happening is at the age of 13, my real mum starts coming back in the picture, who also lives in Mount Druitt. She's turns up one day at the house drunk, screaming and yelling. But the next time I see her, she's got a new boyfriend. She said, we're moving to South Australia. Life's going to be different. We no longer drink. Will you come home? And so I go to my foster family and I said, look, I want to go back and live with my mum. I didn't want to say that I'm being abused in the bedroom or all that stuff. They knew that. I didn't want to make that the reason. They said to me, if you leave, you can't come back. They literally gave me an ultimatum that said, if you go, don't come back. But the day they dropped me off to my house, and I still feel angry around this because they saw it, the pedophile, Les Carter, and the foster mum dropped me off to my real mother's house. The minute I walk in the front door, my mum's sitting on the lounge, she's got a beer in her hand, she's drunk as fuck, and she says, oh, here he is, little Lord Fauntleroy. And she does this little thing. And then she starts screaming and yelling at me, slaps me off my feet. What ends up happening is we end up in South Australia probably 3 weeks later with my brother as well, Jason. And she starts a punch on with her boyfriend. And so my brother and I try to intervene into that, you know. The end result is we get kicked out and placed on a bus to meet our father in Sydney at Oxford Street. When I get off the bus at Oxford Street, my brother and I are walking behind my dad. My dad just suddenly turns around and looks at me and he says, where the fuck do you think you're going? You're not coming with me, mate. Fuck off. I remember sitting at that bus terminal, and I'll be honest, I started crying, right? I thought, I don't have a place to go anymore. I don't have foster mum, a real dad. And all I thought was they're going to lock me back up again and I'm going to be subjected to that fucking horrid shit again, you know? And I was at a point at 13 years old where I'm thinking, I don't want to be on this planet. Everywhere I go, people hurt me. It's just a fucking fucked up world I don't want to be in, you know? But I didn't have the foresight or the knowledge of how to make that happen. I just knew I didn't want to be here. But what ends up happening is I land on the streets of the Cross and I meet other street kids. And for the first time in my life, which is really bizarre, so many people say to me, Glenn, why didn't you just get out of the Cross? Because you know my story gets much worse through the Cross. But it's the first time in my life where I'd ever felt I belonged. And the next person I'm going to accepted, yeah. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, hopefully I can say it without getting emotional, but the whole reason I wrote my book, the whole reason I speak today is not just my story, but it's the story of this beautiful girl I met when I was 14. She was also 14. Her name was Linda. And for the first time in my life, I felt some kind of love, you know, where someone actually cared about me. She seemed enamored with me and I was enamored with her. I did my first everything with her, you know, you know, like I'd hate to say it's my first sexual experience because we both know that I've been through all that abuse, but it's my first sexual experience with a girl, my first time being hugged, cuddled, loved, you know, all those things. And but what ends up happening is we end up moving into a refuge in King's Cross. This refuge is founded by a children's magistrate, a prime minister, which is Rob Blackmore. It's got 7 judges on the board. It has 5 men working there and a woman. The 5 men are all pedophiles, and the woman is complicit in this abuse. I don't know this. I move in. All my street kids, even my brother, all move into this big refuge, you know, where we're told we can drink, we can take drugs, we can have our girlfriend there, come and go where we want. It's right near King's Cross. All seems too real to be true. and that's because it was all five men systematically prey on us over the next 2 years, myself the main target. And but in 1984, 83, sorry, August of 83, they closed the refuge and they placed us into institutions. And I get let out. I start talking. I start speaking about all this abuse on the streets. Police start arresting me and charging me with false charges, assault and robbery, extortion, telling me literally to shut up and be quiet because King's Cross police were corrupt back then. So what they used to do was if you went and reported a crime against you of a sex crime, they would go to the abuser and they'd say for $10,000, this is how it plays out. We can have that kid locked up. We can, and so that's what they were doing. In 1984, my beautiful girlfriend gets murdered. Someone took her life off her, and they fucking crushed me, man. I finally get someone special in my life, and it's like some fucking piece of shit takes her off me. Two men rape her, murder her, take her life off her. They get sentenced to 20 years jail, and then they're released by a pedophile judge named Judge Eldon on appeal, who ends up suiciding himself. But anyway, what ends up happening is in 1984, after Linda's death, I walk up to two of the men at the refuge, Simon Davies, Grant Morris, who I both now had convicted. I said, one day I'm going to write a book. I'm going to tell everyone what you fucking did. I said, one day I'm going to hold you accountable. And I said, one day I'm going to make sure every single person in the world knows your name, knows my name, and knows what you did. He started laughing at me. He said, you're a fucking junkie. He said, you'll be dead by the age of 21. And he said, you're fucking illiterate. You can't even read and write. How are you going to write a fucking book? And both those things were true. But you know what, Francesco, what he did to me was he planted a fucking seed. Don't ever challenge me, man, because I'm that guy. I'm that person that'll fucking remember. Yeah, I'm that guy. I just don't give up. And the problem was that after my girlfriend died, I picked up heroin. And I became a really bad heroin addict. Yeah, living on the
I'm
streets.
sorry that happened to you, Glenn, with Linda. And yeah, I'm really sorry. That's what an awful, awful thing to have to go through and lose your first love. And not only that, but your first love in such a horrific world that you were in, your only comfort. And
And
yeah,
it's a different love, your first love. It's not like my marriage of 18 years where I had a beautiful wife and had 4 kids with. I mean, I could never love anyone more than I love her. But you know what I mean? It's a different kind of love. It's that first
yeah,
love. It's that, that little kid love kind of stuff. And
yeah,
so it did. It hurt me a lot. It really did. And but what it did was it made an angry man on a trajectory towards loss of life. I was literally on the streets, taking pills, taking heroin. I overdosed 22 times in 3 years. I just kept dropping all the time. I was running in on dealers with guns. I was doing fucking crazy shit because I just had this anger. And like I said to you earlier, it was easier for me to be angry than sad.
yeah,
Sad I couldn't cope with. Angry was an
mm,
emotion I understood. And
yeah. And I suppose you become reckless. You don't care. You don't care about what happens. You don't care whether you live, die, who you hurt, what's going on, where it happens. It's just whatever is, you're gonna do it anyway. And yeah,
And after Linda died, I watched Bam Bam die, Madeline die, Alexandra die. I just watched so many kids die, Stephen. All these kids started dying, and I actually thought in my head, that's my lot. I am going to overdose in a back lane of somewhere in King's Cross at some point in time. Someone's not going to find me. And I was okay with that. I really was. I mean, it wasn't like I made a conscious decision to go out and do that, but I know that the recklessness that you speak of, because that's exactly how it was. I just didn't care. I didn't care if I got arrested. I didn't care if I got hurt. I just didn't care. And that makes for a dangerous person.
it does.
It's,
Mm.
yeah. And, but I end up going to jail. So what ends up happening is I meet another girl. We have a daughter. We get engaged. And then what happens is my brother and her hook up, which just fucking literally crushed my soul. Like I've had 5 partners my entire life. And two, like this is like my third person I've been with. And after that betrayal, I sat outside of church, and this is in my book as well. And I remember sitting outside this church and I was listening to the Christian music, and for some reason it comforted me. But then the music stops, right? It all stops. And so I decided to go inside. But before I go inside, I'm literally sitting there rocking back and forth. And I'm actually speaking loudly. I'm going, there's no point. What is the fucking point? Every person in this world is fucking fucked. I have not yet to this day, bar Linda, met somebody worthy of even time. That's how I felt in my heart. Like every person is just poison. And I thought, I don't want to fucking be here. I walk inside this church and I I see this huge big cross and it's got a sheet kind of wrapped around it with like splitters of paint. So I presume it's been used for some kind of backdrop of painting. And what happens is I wrap it around the top of the thing without even thinking. I put it around my thing and then I step off. Just as I step off, this guy just comes fucking flying through and literally lifts me off. Unfortunately for me, I'm still a kid size, like I'm a kid. So he lifts me off and saves my life. And I remember 15 minutes after that thinking, fuck, what did I just do? Like, how did I get myself so worked up that that became an actual option, that I don't want to be here? The next result is I end up getting charged with armed robbery. It's a complicated story again. I didn't really do an armed robbery, but the police wanted me off the streets and that was their way of doing it. But what they didn't realise was they actually saved my life. I was so sick, so crook, so hooked into the gear. And when I went to prison, I was kicked off the methadone. I spent 6 weeks in a police cell coming off methadone, heroin, pills. I was sick as shit. But I spent the next 3 years, 8 months clean, through the system. I get out of jail, I meet my now wife, or we're separated now, but my wife of 18 years, and have 4 kids. But I am stuck in victim mode, man. I don't even know that's what's going on for me. I'm on methadone. The whole world's fucked. Anyone even comes near me, I'm just like that. I'm known as the angry guy. Like, just, I'm angry. And it's like, and it's because I haven't been taught to process or even know what I'm feeling. And on top of all that, I had this, what I call dirty little secret. Well, I didn't want anyone, my wife, to know that I'd been sexually abused or that I'd been vulnerable. She meets this guy that's big and strong, gets out of jail, and it's like totally in contrast of what's actually going on inside, the person who I really am. And but in 1996, I was sitting in my home with my partner and I hear bang, 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 bang on the door and I look out and there's 3 detectives. They said, King's Cross Police. My heart's doing this one straight away. As soon as I heard King's Cross, I'm like, fuck, what's going on here? I open up the door and it's the Woodrow Commission. People were investigating from the Woodrow Commission. They said, you've been identified by multiple victims as a victim of sex crimes in King's Cross and you'll stay in the 80s in front of my wife, right? I was like, fuck. I just felt like I wanted to shrink into this tiny little ball, like, fuck. And but I end up giving evidence to the Woodrow Commission. I end up getting 2 perpetrators convicted. After years of fighting, they got 18 months each. One of them was convicted for raping 20 children. He got 20 18-month sentences to run concurrent, which means that he only got an 18-month sentence for all of that crime. Like it just, and it left me fucking bitter. It did. It's like all that for what, And
Yeah.
yeah,
That would be so, that would be like just so, I can't imagine that disheartening, the feeling in your stomach of all that and all they got. I mean, people get more for bloody speeding fines. Like,
I know.
or like
Or drunk.
reckless driving,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's what it said to me when I sat in court and I heard 18 months was that's my value. They've placed my value at 18 months. And it's a horrible feeling.
That's an awful feeling. Like it would have almost made you feel like, well, that was pointless. Like, what was the point of all that? What was the point of putting myself and everyone around me through all that? Standing in court, going, in front of judges, in front of whoever, lawyers, whatever, and also that shame you had and you carried around and it just come out and now you're like, I'm assuming you and and it's for 18 months for 20 children.
When I got out of prison from 92 to 96, I was living a normal life. We owned a skate shop. I had a little son. One of my sons is about to walk in now. But what ends up happening is in 2009, from 1996 to 2009, I start using again. And even though I'm living a life, I'm on a methadone program, I'm still toying with it. Speed, coke, heroin, whatever I can get my hands on. In 2009, I end up going to rehab. And I spent 12 months in rehab. The problem was at the end of my rehab, I got cancer. I had thyroid cancer. They had to do a thyroidectomy and, all this treatment for my cancer. So I had to leave rehab. And I ended up living on the streets for the next 4 years. Broke up with my partner and my kids, and I'm actually homeless again. But for some miracle, I just didn't pick up. I just kept, I worked as a volunteer, as a cook. I lived in a homeless shelter. I literally slept on the streets of Parramatta. And, but I just didn't use, I just decided I didn't want to use drugs anymore. I just didn't like that feeling, But I ended up moving here where I am now in the Blue Mountains. And for the next 10 years, I literally didn't leave my house. I didn't shower. I hardly washed. And I hardly ate. and I just sat down watching movie after movie, and my kids would ring me up and say, "Dad, you want to go to the football?" Because they've always known me to play footy, kick the ball, do whatever. All of a sudden, I've just gone into like a deep depression. It's like, and I was starting to put on weight. Like I said, I'm not showering. I'm eating like takeaway only, and then my ex-wife starts ringing me up and saying, "Look, the kids are worried about you. I'm worried about you. You can't sit on a lounge for the rest of your life." And I was like, I just stuck in that victim mode for about 10 years until, you know how it started for me? You'll kind of laugh. It was my youngest daughter, God love her. I'm a rap dancer, so I used to be a break dancer, right? I was the only thing I've really been really good at in my whole life is dancing, right? I actually got medals as well for ballroom dancing. She says, "Daddy," she said, "I'm doing a TikTok. Would you do a TikTok dance with me?" And I said, "Oh, what the fuck? Let's do it." And he says, "You know that song, My Body Don't Talk, It Jiggle Jiggles." And at that
Yeah.
point in time, I had a bit of that going on. So I was like, "Yeah, my body don't talk, it jiggle jiggles." So we do this rap dancing. And then after it, she done the dumbest thing. Well, not dumbest, the cutest thing, maybe. She says, "Dad, I got 100 followers and that post got 120 likes. You're an old man, Dad." She said, "You would take a lifetime to get 100 followers, let alone 100 likes." I was like, "Fuck you. Challenge accepted. Let's go." So I end up going online, all grubby and grossed, and I read the back of my book. That's all I did. I pick up my book and I just read the prologue on the back, right? It Within 24 hours, I had like 2,000 followers. I had like about 24,000 likes on the actual thing, and I think it 160,000 views. I was like, "Wow." And she's like, "That's not natural. That's not right. That's not fair." It's, but what actually happened that really changed for me was that people started reaching out to me and they said, "Hey,
Mm.
bro, oh, God, it's going to hurt my heart. Just keep going. Like whatever's going on for you, just keep going. Please keep speaking, Glenn, because your voice is liberating other people's." And then I started doing more and more, and I started to self-examine myself. I started to get a piece of paper, Fran, and I started to write shit down. I'd have an interaction through the day, and instantly I felt angry, and I'd come home and I'll go and start writing all this shit out. And then I realized that anger was actually a secondary emotion. That what was actually
Mm.
going on for me was either rejection or hurt. There was an undercurrent, and I started to put the pieces together, and I started to realize I always thought if I stopped using drugs, my life would improve. Right? That's not my story. My story is that I had such bad PTSD, ADHD, and all the other fucking letters in the alphabet, I'm sure. I just thought to myself, I need to address that. And the minute I
Mm.
started addressing that stuff and I started to feel some peace, I started going to the gym and started boxing and just doing all that kind of stuff. I just realized that my problem was never drugs. That was a secondary problem. That was a symptom,
Mm.
if that's the right word, of something much deeper. And
Mm.
that was undiagnosed trauma from my childhood. So I had to start to relive that childhood, and writing the book was a huge part of that, you
Yeah,
know.
it would be like, I suppose, a detox for your soul writing that book.
Say to me all the time, "Oh, Glenn, I'm worried about you sharing stuff online. I feel like you keep reliving your trauma." I say, "No, bro, that's the opposite. As kids, we're taught to keep this shit in, especially as men, we're told, it's weak to speak, don't say this, don't say that." So that's the way we grow up. I've actually learned now that being vulnerable is actually a superpower. When you have the guts to say,
Mm.
"I'll share my story and I don't give a fuck how you receive it. I don't give a fuck how you receive me. This is my open, authentic, who I am
So,
self." And
yeah.
it's been liberating. And now, like I say, when I go out now, like I've got about 160,000 followers between my socials. I've got being invited all over the country to talk at different events, open rehabs, and I've been on Current Affair twice, 60 Minutes. I've just been on a documentary called Rise and Fall. I've got another documentary coming. Like, who would have fucking thought, that all these things would happen?
Yeah. I feel like, for me anyway, like the bigger you become in life later on, the more shit you have to go through to get there. Like
Absolutely.
that's usually how I see it. Like, and just the fact that you sat on the couch, for 10 years and just eating and didn't shower and didn't go out, watch movie after movie, you probably just thought, oh, like this is just it for my life now. Like, but I knew I kind of pick up from that. There would have been that little thought in the back of your mind, like, there's got to be more. Like, there's got to be more than this.
That voice has always been resounding. It's like two little voices. There's one is there's got to
Yeah.
be more than this. The other part that I found for me was that I used to look at everybody else's life and like Christmas time specifically, places like that. Everyone's having a Christmas dinner and a family, and I'm like, I don't have a mum, I don't have a dad, I don't have a brother or sister, or any of those fucking people. I forgot, like, we forget what we actually do have sometimes because we're so bent on what someone else has and what we don't that we forget to realize what we do. You know, I have 5 fucking kids, 7 grandkids, a roof over my head. I've got my health. I'm intelligent. I've got all these different things that are going for me. But I was so stuck in the rut, you know, of and you're right. What had actually happened was I'd thrown my hands up. I had the fuck it. So I was like, fuck it, I'm done. I just don't want no part of this world. I don't want to communicate with anybody. And I did it. I walked up the street, my head was down, I'd buy what I needed to do. I'd come home. I literally, people talk to me, I'd say fuck off or just didn't answer at all. I was so bitter and angry at the
Yeah.
world. And that's not, that's not the whole world. You know, one of the things I've learned, the best thing that I've learned, three things. One is that when you're in bad juju, you draw bad juju. So like,
100%.
so the reason that I drew all those people in my life was because that was a reflection of me. And since I've been selfless in some ways doing my street work and I've just had this positive energy, all the people that come into my life now are that. I just seem to be surrounded by beautiful people and it's restored my faith. It really has in society and in people in general.
Oh, absolutely. And like it's funny you say that. Like, if you have bad juju, you draw bad juju. Because I would like my day job. Like I take a lot of calls, and like
Yeah,
I've noticed there's a pattern. Like if I'm having a bad day, right? Like or shit happens, or you're in a bad mood or whatever. I actually continuously throughout that day get really grumpy people on the
yeah,
calls.
yeah,
And I'll be like, what's going on? And I'll say to myself, this is because you're in a bad mood. So
yeah,
you're putting out that energy. So
yeah.
once I flip it, the calls calm down. Like so it's absolutely true. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the biggest part of my story, I think that people would like to hear, I guess, is that what turned it all around for me, the real
Yeah.
catalyst for
What
that.
yeah.
So what ended up happening was I had a friend named Gary Wright, TikTok Gary they call him,
Mhm.
ring me up out of the blue and he goes, "Hey bro, I've got an event coming on in Melbourne. I'd really love you to go." Now when I went up there, I just jumped off the Suboxidone program. This is 3 years ago, right? I was completely
So this is
withdrawing.
3 years ago from now.
Yeah, yeah, 3 years ago from now. And I
Yeah.
said, all right, bro, I'll come up. And I went to this event and I met all these other influencers, but I wasn't really engaging. I was listening, I was watching, I was present, but I wasn't engaged in any of it. But it was on the way home is where things changed for me, right? I have to get a plane back from Melbourne and then a train back to Central. And as I'm sitting at Central Station at the middle of the night, I see all these homeless people. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? When I was 13, I used to sleep on Central Station, right? They used to kick the bench that I used to be on at 5:45 every morning and say, out of there. And they'd literally escort me out of there till I was gone, from that present. And I thought, nothing's changed. I'm looking at the same place 40 years later. And I thought, you know what? I only had 70 bucks. That's all I had to my literal name. And I thought, I'm going to spend this 70 bucks. I'm just going to go out and buy some people something to eat and just let them know I see them, that someone actually cares about them. And I did that, right? And I thought, on the way home, I thought, I'm going to do that again. So 2 weeks later, I come down, 70 bucks in my pocket. But this time, I'm talking to people on a live on my trip down. Like, I had no plan of going live doing it. I was just going on my live on the way down. And people saying, keep it on, Glenn, keep it on, walking in the streets with the camera. So I said, all right, no worries. But I kept it on me, right? Because I didn't want to film other people, because I didn't want to impose on other people's stuff. And then one guy reaches out, he said, I need a phone. He said, I can get a job and I can get all this stuff if you can get me a phone. And I'm a bit skeptical. And then another guy online, his name's Droneway, he says, Glenn, go and buy him a phone. I'll stick money in your account to cover for the phone. I'm like, all right. So I do that. It ends up growing into this. I mean, I'm an actual registered charity now. I have staff. Like, it's incredible. I now have been to Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, running leg up projects to help homeless. Every Christmas now I go down. Last year I gave away $2,800 in gift cards. The year before 1,800 donated by people. I have drop off points in Blaxland, Penrith, like people that just little boxes where people put in body wash, shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, toothpastes, swags. I do barbecues every 6 weeks. I've got 3 young kids that are 21-year-old who've just restored. Like, I thought all young people are fucking selfish, and I own 5 of them, but I still believe they can be selfish, right? But they show me another side. One's an AIN, one's an NDIS worker, and one's a counsellor, and they all want to improve their skills in their positions. And they said, Glenn, we want to come and learn from you off the streets. And now like every day I get people like my messages in Messenger alone is about 300 unanswered messages. I try to answer them all, but I just can't. Every time I answer five, 10 more come in, and and people want my phone number. They want to speak to me. They want to, and I get it. They want to share their story of what's going on. Like I said, it's what came from Penrith. 8 different people. Glenn, Glenn, Glenn. Everywhere I go, and it's like I used to get really funny, like I was like, I put my hoodie on, I got my glasses on, I'm darting through the shopping centre. Now I don't give a shit. I just walk through and someone says hello, hi mate, and I stop and have a conversation, and it's like I get as much from them as they get from me. Like I learn stuff all the time off people.
Yeah, so that trip to Melbourne 3 years ago on your way back, that was that turning point where you realized, hold on a minute, like I can do something here, and how much people needed help. And did that start the idea for your charity? And did that
My idea for the charity didn't start until I was at Central Station, and it probably didn't start until about a few weeks after that, like that I was actually going to create a charity. But what happened in Melbourne that made it different was firstly, Gary, when he spoke to me, he goes, bro, you got a hell of a story. And he said, you're articulate. He said, you speak very well, you speak very clearly and very honest. He said, you're going to blow up. He said, if you just keep going, and then another one, the one that really got to me was Droneway, when he rang me up and he goes, I just want to let you know I love you, bro, and I'm proud of you. And I know that's like it's funny to get upset for those two words, but no one's ever said I'm proud of you before. Like,
yeah.
and I know that sounds like a weak thing to say, but I've never done anything, I guess, to be proud of. I ran a marathon in jail and came first place. People said, well done, but no one ever said I'm proud of you, and I thought that it just felt nice, and I started getting a lot of that. People just kept saying it to me, and like, so I kept going, and it's really funny. When I was in Melbourne, they had this big barbecue, right? I sat at the river on my own. Or I cooked on the barbecue. Everyone else partied on while I just cooked. Like, I wanted to do something, you know what I mean? I just went to Melbourne again to a Cap Carter concert and to open up two rehabs. And my mate Danny Shannon, he says to me, Glenn, he says, you amaze me, bro. He said, you do things I can't do. I was walking all the way down the street giving out $10 notes to all these homeless people, right? And he's like, I don't know how you just walk up and talk to people like that. But the bigger one was, I'm a breakdancer, right? When we got in the club, one of the guys says, can I film you doing a bit of breakdancing? I said, fuck it, let's go. Jumped on the dance floor and started doing all this stuff. And he goes, there's no way on God's earth, bro, in front of all these people, like 800 people, I could get up and dance. He said, how you did that beyond me. And it's like, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks anymore, Francesca. That's the key. Your
Yeah.
opinion of me doesn't matter. You know what I
No.
mean? And we get too hung up on that in life.
Oh, for sure. It's freeing when you just stop giving a shit what other people think and
Mm.
just share your story. And I think, like, yeah, you definitely have got that energy about you, Glenn, to make big changes, and that's obviously happening. And what's the name of your charity, please?
It's called the Leg Up Project.
Okay,
The
yeah,
Leg Up Project, yeah. It's
yeah, and that's grown so quickly. Hey, like setting up two rehab centres in Melbourne, and oh my gosh.
and it has just exploded. It's gone so, why it's gone so well? There are so many people that do stuff on the streets. And look, some are well meaning, some are just crossing T's and dotting I's. Some don't give a shit, it's a pay packet. They know that I genuinely care. But what else they know is that I've been there, I've done that, and I'm not bullshitting them. They know I've been a heroin addict. They know I've been to jail. They know I grew up on the streets. You know what I mean? So when they have a conversation with me, it's real. It's genuine. And mate, they hug me. I love you, bro. When I first used to give them gift cards, right, I used to give person a gift card, and they thanks, mate. They'd walk away, and I used to take it. I was like, fuck. Do you realize I just sold fucking a book to give you that money? And that's what's going on in my head, right? And I thought, let go of that shit. Stop the expectations on how you're presented. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Stop
Yeah.
looking at the facade, looking at the heart. So I just say, brother,
Mm.
have a beautiful day. Fuck you, bro. Whatever. I didn't care. But just kept backing up, backing up, backing up, backing up. And the most important thing was I say what I mean and I mean what I say. If I tell you I'm going to do something, it's fucking done. And I won't commit to something if I can't do it. But we've changed all sorts of lives. And it's not always pretty. I've got to go to a funeral next Sunday, on the next Monday or whatever day, the 22nd, whatever day that ends on, for a young guy, Ben, who I was helping on the streets. He got off the streets, got everything right, had a bloody heart attack. Like, he was using everything. And so I'm going up to to speak at the funeral on the 22nd.
There'd be a lot of there'd be a real dark and sad side to it, and especially if you're doing it for the right reasons. There's a lot of Oh, look, like I'm just gonna say there's a lot of influencers out there and people that just, you see them walk up and give a homeless person like food or money, and I'm
Oh,
like, why are you filming that?
yeah, that annoys the shit out of me. There's one guy that like he'll drop the wallet and then come back and say, "Oh, you found my wallet, bro. Here you go.
Oh,
Here's ten
yeah,
dollars." And I'm like, "Fuck, bro. Why don't you just go up quietly and say, hi, mate. What's your name? Can I do something that could help
yeah.
without
What's
it
your
being a song
story?
and dance?" Yeah,
Yeah, like what? Yeah, why does everything have to be filmed? I think with you, Glenn, it's because obviously your heart's true intent is to help and to help others. So that's when you do something with that intent, then it's going to
yeah,
grow. If it's for the
that's
wrong
right.
reasons, yeah,
And I always get permission off people if I do film. And like the reason I do film some of it is because I mean my whole business relies on people donating stuff. So people need to see what I'm actually doing. But the bigger picture, I've had several times now where I've done a video about somebody, done an interview with them, and then I've all of a sudden inundated with messages. I went to school with that guy. That's my brother. That's my son. That's my mum. Whatever it is, and I'm like, bang, I have a secondary person, someone who I can liaise with that can help me work towards the goal of getting this person off the streets. Because that's the hardest part of my job is that people get comfortable on the streets, right? And they actually
yeah,
get comfortable because, and then that's a whole myriad of complications in itself. But the biggest problem on the streets is not drug addiction, which is a misnomer. It's actually mental health. The
yeah.
in 2015, they closed down all the institutions relate to mental health and just boom, release them to the streets. And it's sad because so many people I come across, you can see they're just not capable of of,
Mm,
e- of living on the street, but let alone being in a flat on their own. I think that the NDIS fucking joke, just between you and me. I think that it's a good, well intentioned, but when used incorrectly, it doesn't filter down where it needs to go. If we could get communal houses where we put these people in, where there is an NDIS worker who works to keep places clean and to keep them active,
mm,
and the biggest one, the opposite to addiction is connectivity, be connection. And that so people misunderstand that's a thing, loneliness, and that
mm.
would be the biggest thing. What's up, Josh? You good? Oh,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I suffered depression, and I know when I've been in that state, it is truly hard to like just even get up and go to the shop,
yeah.
and or like get into the car or pick up the phone or do really just do anything. You're just trying to survive. So tee that in with, say, schizophrenia or whatever it might be, or addictions, or, I mean, I've got a roof over my head and I'm not in a position where I was vulnerable like that. But, there's a lot of people that are. So that, I can totally see how it ends up that way, where they all just can't function. So everyone's ending up on the streets with unresolved and untreated mental illness that
That's
they
right.
can't get out of. And yeah, it's the system's a mess. Like the whole thing is just a complete mess. There isn't really any help from the NDIS. I mean, they're under resourced and overrun. I understand that. But I think like the system needs to be re-evaluated and broken down and rebuilt. That's how I see it.
I agree. And I think the thing that we're doing different on the streets that others don't seem to do is that, yeah, we give out all the tangibles, the things that people need, like everyone else. But what we try to do is we try and build relationships. I try and get to know the person on the street. I'll spend half an hour with someone if I need to, just sit down. That's why I have a team of us that I just say, spread the love and look people in the eye, get to know them, and don't ask them their story. Talk about whatever they want to talk about. What will
Yeah,
happen is that when you build the rapport, they will reveal themselves to you anyway. And then what I
that's
try
so
to do
true.
is, yeah, liaise on their behalf with the different agencies because they're not capable, some of them, of doing that. And so having someone they know that's been there, done that, and they trust has been huge for our success in what we do.
Yeah, I think that's key. And like, can I ask, Glenn, how do you go with your mental health now? And try, do you still have your struggles? And surely, yeah, you would.
I do. So I still struggle with self-esteem a lot. Believing I belong. Sometimes I get this little voice in the back of my head that tries to tell me bullshit. But what I want, things I've worked out is when I'm alone with my own thoughts, I'm in bad company. So
Yeah,
I need to distract from that bad company. I do a lot of training, so I box, I do weights. I draw, garden, I do it, and I'm just so busy. I mean, I don't have the time to sit and think these days. It's like
No.
phenomenal. But I do have my moments. Um, I do. And like I had to go to a lawyer's the other day. They're trying to sue for litigation. And the I just want ownership. They don't understand. They're dealing with a different beast in me. Like most people say, yeah, give me the money. I'm not that guy. I want to go to court. I want it to be heard. I don't give a fuck if they give me money or don't. What I want is genuine accountability to say we made a mistake in the system. We are so sorry, Glenn. But they don't. They're on the back foot all the time trying to defend, and it's like it's just offensive.
It is. And that I see what you're saying when you say like you being alone with your thoughts, because I'm the same. I've always got to be
Yeah.
doing something, because if I start sitting around, that's when I start getting, imposter syndrome and all sorts of shit that comes into my head.